Season 1, Episode 4. I'm Brankles, and I'm joined by Elsa and Hiccup. Guys, welcome back to another week of the CC Zone.
Glad to be here again. Glad to be filling in. You know, Lindor's loss once again is my gain, so I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a good time. I'm glad to be back. I always like coming back to the show. You know, it's good because,
And folks, we're going to be breaking down, some of these quarterfinal matches that happened, but we're also going to be hearing from some of the players that played in these matches. Elsa, I know you got to cast some of those games, so it's going to be some fun, spicy moments that we're going to probably hear from these players.
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear from them. I certainly see them enough on the screen. So,
all right. Well, we're going to start with PGO versus Lemon Citrus. Now, in Game 1, PGO takes Game 1 with the duo of Weakside ADC and Oddmitch. The combo of Braum and Caitlyn served them well, especially in shutting down Sexatus. Now, Elsa, break down, who do you think was the most pivotal for Game 1?
You know, for Game 1, I do really want to highlight the Caitlyn play that we were able to see out of the side of PGO. I thought it was really impressive to kind of be able to take that pick that was definitely a counter pick to the Vayne, which did come out from Lemon Citrus, and it was just something that was able to absolutely smash it in lane, and that's what we know Caitlyn does best. So I was excited to see that. I think the Braum was also, I don't know if we've seen that from Oddmitch yet, but certainly he put on a really impressive performance on that. So kind of both of the bot lane duo I thought stood out really, really strong in the first game.
Now, Hiccup, going to you, we got to see Huffzone rock the Volibear in the top lane after Shin was banned out. Now, how do you feel about him pulling this pick?
So I actually love Volibear. Okay, I've always loved him. If you go back in my games back in I don't even know 2010, I was playing this champion. It was bad, and I sucked so bad at it. So looking at the new one and looking at how Huffzone actually pilots this champion, it is just so good. He knew exactly when to shut off towers. He knew exactly when to come to team fights. He knows how to play the champion, and he showed it there, and it was awesome. With the Shen being banned out, it's unfortunate because you don't get that map, that full map to play with his ultimate. You can't just ult the Caitlyn and have a good day, But in this case, he knows how to pilot the champion. He's really good at it, and even later games, he shows that he's unstoppable with it. So.
And, we go from that to Game 2, and Lemon Citrus, they fought back, and Bad Vibes was a bad man, and especially on the Shen. He goes 11 kills, 1 death, 17 assists, putting PGO on notice. Now, Hiccup, my question for you is, was this more of a PGO loss, or was this a Lemon Citrus bounce back?
So I think that this was a little bit more of a disrespectful game by PGO. I think that they stomped them in Game 1, and they thought that they could play around a little bit in Game 2, but that's just from what I saw. But it's you can also look at Sexatus, because I believe he played the Felios in that game. Was that the Felios game? Yep. Where he basically sat there and healed everything while 4 people were on top of him. Sexatus turned it up in that game, and I think that they kind of disrespected Sexatus in that, and they didn't, target him enough early game. And he, Aphelios just scales and just gets to that point where he was just unkillable. And that's what I predicted last week on the show. And I said, if you give Sexatus some room, this is what he'll do. And he turned it up, and that's how they won the game.
And Elsa, I know in the recent weeks we've talked about with PGO, sometimes not playing up or playing down to their competition, taking games off, especially in the draft. Was there any picks that they pulled in Game 2 that surprised you?
Well, what I actually really was interested in for the draft of this second game was actually the picks that Lemon Citrus took, because it really showed to me that Lemon Citrus did their homework here. First of all, they picked the Zilean for mid lane, not something that we see a lot in this current meta, but actually it's a big takeaway from Oddmitch on the side of PGO. This is actually his most played champion in solo queue, and from listening to some of the comms in draft, when Zilean's generally left open for PGO, they're really happy to take that for the support pick. So I liked the flexibility from Lemon Citrus to be able to take it away. And then also, you already hit Brankles on Bad Vibes. He did absolutely fantastic. And not only that, but he was on the Shen, which is, pretty signature pick for HuffZone, the top laner from PGO. So being able to take that champion that we know HuffZone knows inside and out and be able to beat him with it, and being able to beat him with it against his Camille, which is something that we've even seen HuffZone in the chat being like, hey, if you don't ban my Camille, I'm going to take it. And this time they were able to call the bluff and say, hey, go ahead, take the Camille. I'm just going to pick one of your own champions against you. And Bad Vibes just absolutely popped off. So I liked that drafting strategy that we saw from Lemon Citrus. I was really impressed from them.
And we go into looking at game 3, it was definitely a flex for PGO. Predictive Gaming Odin really fought back in that game because we got to see as they stomped behind the support playing Senna. Now, Elsa, as much as PGO was rolling in this matchup, what went wrong for Lemon Citrus, considering they had 3 players combined for 0 kills and 13 deaths?
Yeah, I think that part of it is what went wrong for Lemon Citrus, the first part, like you said. And for me, what goes wrong is they kind of pigeonholed themselves into a kind of wombo combo composition. They got the Jarvan and the Galio. Now, some teams have a really high regard for this, but actually on the analyst desk last week, we were talking with Shinyuna, the mid laner from Lost Chapter. They were referencing the fact that when you pick up these Galio and Jarvan comps, it really pigeonholes you into a certain kind of play. When you have those 2 champions and you're going in, you go all in, and then once the Jarvan ultimate and the Galio ultimate are blown, that's it. That's all you have. So if you're not able to get kills off that initial engage, it leaves you in a really sticky spot if you're Lemon Citrus. And then on top of that, I think Lemon Citrus gave up. As good as their draft was in game 2, it was just as bad in game 3. They gave up so much to PGO in terms of giving them that Vigar and Senna bot lane. And I'm sure maybe we have more to say about the Senna, but giving Weakside in particular that Vigar pick, it really unlocks the rest of their team composition to be able to add AD in other positions. We saw Whole Grain Man able to pick up the Pantheon, which is something that's kind of hard to fit into a lot of team compositions. And then again, unlocking Odd Mitch on the Senna.
And speaking of that Senna, we saw how well it played. And Hiccup, you are a ADC. How scary is it to see a Senna lineup, especially the way they were playing it?
So Senna, I hate that champion. And I hate that champion because when I play against it, when it's on my team, it's great. It's whatever, except for mine. My support usually is not good at it. But that champion Senna, with the passive, getting those 20 souls, getting that extra 25 range and 15% crit or something like that, for every 20 souls, it's scales. She's a scaling champion. Early, you have to shut her down. If you can't shut her down, late game, she's going to shoot you from a mile away. She's going to slow you down with Glacial Augment if she goes Glacial Augment. She's going to heal her team, and she's going to be your primary threat. You have to take her out, and if you can't reach her because she shoots from 5 miles away, well, then you're in trouble. So I think that they piloted it really well, and it was just a difficulty to have to deal with.
And considering all of those factors that you guys were talking about with the draft picks and allowing PGO to unlock it, we did see that come to fruition in game 4 as they take the series 3-1 as HuffZone returns to the Volibear and goes 8-0-7. Now, Hiccup, what impressed you the most in this series? Was it the drafting by PGO throughout it, or was it the fact that they're willing to play some of these kind of off picks that you don't normally see from these players?
So what interested me or impressed me most about the series was just their bounce back and coordination after losing a game, and then coming back to the game, and then just being able to mentally have that fortitude. I think that is just very, very important. Dropping a game to Lemons wasn't something that they probably anticipated. But with that being said, they did drop a game, and I think that just their fortitude to be able to last through this game and fight the way through it, and then HuffZone having 8-0, not dying at all, that's a difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult thing not to die in a amateur league. You know what I mean? So I think that it all is them just meshing together better as a team that really impresses me.
And for me, going to you, Elsa, when we look at series like this, there's obviously like a stark difference between who's the MVP and who's the least valuable player. And for me, when I look at MVP, I have to say Huffzone. I mean, he played a phenomenal, job, especially playing on the Volley Bear. But if I had to say an, LVP, it may not come down to the game. It might just be to the drafting that Lemon Citrus did. Who's your MVP and who's your LVP?
So when I looked at this series as a whole, for me, I think that Huffzone maybe had the single most impressive game, kind of in that game 4. Hiccup alluded to it. He didn't even die. But looking at just all 4 games, I'm going to go with a player in a really thankless position normally, which is the support. And Oddmitch is definitely my MVP. Not only did he post really impressive KDAs, which is a difficult thing to do as support when you're often throwing yourself in the line of fire, throughout all 4 games, even in their loss, he played 4 different champions. He played the Braum, he played the Lulu, he played the Senna, and he played the Trundle. So not only the KDA, not only 4 different champions, those are also very differing play styles. Like, I would say there's 3 different play styles between kind of those tank supports of the Braum and Trundle, the Lulu, and then the Senna. And with support players, so often, because that support pool is so huge, we see them kind of pigeonholing into, engage supports or enchanter supports. This man totally showed that he could do it all, not only supporting his team, but with that Senna game, like, we could argue that he really carried the whole game. Mm-hmm. He posted a KDA of 6-1 and 11, so he was basically a carry in that game, which oftentimes can happen with Senna. So Oddmitch is really my MVP. In terms of least valuable player, for me, it's got to go to Zygon, the jungler of Lemon Citrus. He really struggled, and if we are going to talk about KDA, if we're going to talk about feeding deaths to the enemy team, Zygon, I believe he had 6 deaths was his least throughout the entire series. And when you're feeding that many kills to the enemy laners, it just makes it so difficult for your team to do what they need to do. And so that was kind of my biggest issue with Lemon Citrus throughout. I know in this playoffs you want to play aggressive, you want to play kind of fast and loose, but I think Zygon, he took it a little too far.
We now go to the other quarterfinal matchup, which was between Limitless Future and TA Heart and Soul. Now, Game 1, Limitless Future takes first blood thanks in large part to Fonzo's 11-3-11 victor. Now, Elsa, in the past few weeks, we have focused on the bot lane for this squad. What did Fonzo do to make his mark?
So I think it's really easy to focus on the bottom lane for this squad because they have a lot of highlight plays. We see Snowlife often kind of picking up some of these different support picks and doing a lot with them. But what I think is absolutely incredible about Fonzo, and we've seen this 2 weeks in a row, is his willingness to take blind pick mid laners into absolutely anything and just dominate the game on them. In this series, we saw him picking up the Victor. We saw him picking up the Cassiopeia, which we had seen before, also picking up the Corki, and then finally rounding it out with the Malzahar. And I think Fonzo just does a really good job of playing to not lose his lane, not setting his opponents far ahead of him. Even with the Malzahar game, when we saw ZPM absolutely popping off, just going crazy on the Orianna on the other side, it wasn't because Malzahar lost lane. It was rather just because the rest of the team kept feeding the Orianna. So I think that's so important for this squad from Limitless Future, especially really on both sides of the draft, especially though on the red side, because it allows you to save your counter pick for top lane for Martial Arts, who also had an absolutely fantastic series every single time. And that's something that really enables your team. So I've been impressed with Fonzo, his ability to just blind pick these mage champions in particular and do so much damage throughout the game for Limitless Future.
And that's what's very important when it comes to playoffs in any sport. You see your star players are going to be your star players, but can those role players step up? And I think Fonzo did a phenomenal job there in Game 1. Going to you, Hiccup, did the lack of mobility hurt Heart and Soul, or was it rust since they haven't played much in recent weeks?
So I don't know if it's really the lack of mobility that really hurt them, especially in that Game 1 their team comp was, they had Ezreal Yuumi. So there's quite a bit of mobility, if you want to say, right there. And I think what really hurt them in that specific game was that their Limitless had a ton of just AoE engage or AoE stuns, whereas, Heart and Soul had like Volibear, who's like single target. I'm gonna single target stun one person, and then they had Anivia, who had kind of AoE, but not really, like small area stuns. So yeah, it definitely comes down to their it's more of like rust, yeah, I guess you could say, and the fact that they really haven't played maybe in some time, but then additionally they've also lost matches recently, so it's kind of maybe some nerves going into game one, and that's what I think really hurts them. And on top of that, I think that their Nubly is newer. He's a newer ADC. He actually did really well, I thought, in the entire series. He gave them chances, and he capitalized on a couple different things. One dragon fight that I can think of off the top of my head, where he was with Yuumi and they defended the dragon and basically stopped it until their mid laner came back and teleported in. So that fight alone was awesome. So I think that Nubly did an excellent job, but I think it was just rust for now. Yeah.
Now, moving on to game two, Elsa alluded a little bit to the greatness that we saw from Martial Arts 4Y. My man pulled out the Aatrox, went 15-2-9. Elsa, for someone that, when you call games, what's it like when you see someone that just balloons in gold like that and is just dominating in a matchup like this?
I mean, I just honestly feel scared for the other team. It's really hard. It feels like I'm starting to become a little bit mean, honestly, towards ASF Minor in that game, just because it was hard to see kind of the bright spots for him in this matchup. And honestly, it was specifically a little bit embarrassing for him just because he had picked up the Aatrox in the previous game, and then Martial Arts picks up the Aatrox blind in the next one. ASF Minor gets to take whatever he wants against it. He decides to take the Gangplank, and honestly, he just gets completely dismantled. Just solo kill after solo kill, literally diving him under tower. But honestly, also, you can see when players are really hitting their stride in a game and feeling really confident. From what I've seen, even just throughout the Discord and just listening to Martial Arts kind of talk about this Limitless Future team, you can tell that this is a player with a lot of confidence. He exudes that, and you can just see it absolutely come out on the Rift with this Aatrox performance. It looked like he was playing a buffed version of the champion that ASF Minor was playing in the previous game.
And there's supreme confidence there with him playing the Aatrox. Hiccup, we go to someone you were mentioning earlier, Nubly. There's a difference between confidence and I would think insanity in playing, Wukong ADC. Have you ever seen that?
So it's cheesy. It's definitely a cheesy bot lane. And it's definitely something that I would hate to see in my solo queue, because I know for a fact I'd probably get shit on. But it turned up. I mean, it turned up in team fights. It did really well. The farm was there, surprisingly. I didn't think that it would be able to farm very well into the bot lane with amount of poke and all those things that comes with it. But the Wukong actually came in clutch for a lot of the team fights, definitely won them a lot of favorable things, and I do think that the versatility on Nubly shown there, I wish that he was there the whole time from the beginning of the season, because I feel like this would be a totally different team with him there, because he definitely turned it up. But I do want to touch on Martial Arts really quick with the top lane, because if you look, he averaged, I think, 30 CS after laning phase over his lane opponent every single game. And that is why he's my MVP for that series, so I just wanted to touch on that.
No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you watched, you watched, and like I said, you were saying, if we got to see Nubly from the start, because this league is rich with ADC talent. Mm-hmm. We've seen some great performances out of some of these ADCs. And Nubly, I feel, to trust kind of the new guy with Wukong in the bot lane, and you went positive. I think I think that bodes well for him as a player, but also the confidence they had in him. Now we go to game 3, and TA Heart and Soul fire back with ZPM going nuclear on Lissandra. Now, Elsa, with ZPM getting 11 kills in this game, how important was this pick for Heart and Soul to get?
I mean, I think that it was obviously really important, and I just am not used to seeing Lissandra as a champion kind of pop off as much as he did. It's not something that you think of as generally like controlling the entire game, but ZPM showed us that it's certainly something that can happen, and I think also it paired really well with the rest of the team, just being able to lock, multiple members or down with the W, or maybe even just one crucial member with the ultimate, and keep them into the things like the Misfortune ultimate, keeping them into things like, the Graves damage, just being able to get free, being able to make those skill shots, not skill shots anymore because Lissandra has just locked someone down into place. But even beyond that, we see ZPM, he's the one who ended up with the kills. He's the one who ended up doing just so much damage. Even playing into a lane against the Corki, which while not necessarily being a losing lane, it's definitely one that you start getting outranged in very heavily later on. So, he just kind of showed that he was a problem on that champion. I believe it ended up forcing a ban in the next game by Limitless Future, and that's obviously what you want, especially when you're, again, blind picking your champion like ZPM did.
And to correct myself, ZPM had 10 kills, but he also had 1 death and 11 assists, which is phenomenal on a champion like Lissandra. Now, Hiccup, when you think about having, Lissandra in the mid lane, and you have Misfortune, who's not really a mobility champion whatsoever, and then you have Graves, how important was this team to also have the Sion and the Leona be that tank group?
So the Sion and Leona have a really fun interaction between each other, because the Sion can basically set up everybody like, hey, look at me, fight me, come to me. And then Leona can be like, there they are, and then drop her ultimate down, which is perfect for an MF ult. And then on top of that, you grab the single target stun lockdown that Lissandra has with her ultimate, and then also with her AoE stun with her W. Going in there, that CC is deadly. Like, there's just no escape, especially when, like you said, you're against a Corki, which isn't necessarily a losing lane, but later on in the game, being able to stop the Corki from doing basically anything is huge.
And now we move over to game 4. This was a really gutsy performance. There was a lot of deaths across the board, and Limitless end the series with Snow Life on the Veigar. Now, Hiccup, why, or if you could explain to those that are listening, how did they overcome the 11 deaths on Omnific, who was playing the Jinx, and why was it so important for them to not allow a game 5 to happen? So,
to talk about the 11 deaths, it's a Jinx. Okay, early game, it's Jinx, and once she gets those 3 items, the 3 items that she needs, she'll literally pop off, and she comes online. So she does do damage later on in the game. I think there was a lot of deaths overall. Especially with that throughout the team. Like, I think the jungler and the top laner might have had 8 deaths each or something like that, or maybe the mid and the top, or something like that, whatever. But this game is just a fiesta. There's deaths all over the place. I recall one in particular Baron fight towards the end, which is a coin flip, like, hey, we're pushing in top lane, and then I think, or mid lane, and then they got a kill, but then waited it out and then backed. Then Heart and Soul went straight for Baron, and so did Limitless. They got there, and then the Baron with a MF and who was it, Orianna. So the Orianna ult, because everybody's sitting in the Baron pit, and MF just presses R, and they're all dead. And that was literally the turning point for Heart and Soul to try to bring this game back. This wasn't important game for Limitless to close out, because if they didn't close this out, I feel like a game 5 might actually go into the favor of Heart and Soul, because they had the momentum coming into even that game. So it was a messy game. It was kind of ugly everywhere from both sides. With what was it, like, ended up being 70 kills I think at the end of the game. Like, it was quite a bit. So,
and Elsa, speaking of that Baron call, Do you think it was, obviously in the end, Limitless Future was able to pull off the victory and win the series 3-1, but do you feel as though it was the wrong call from the due to that? Because obviously they were leading throughout the match. Like, did you feel like it was too much of a force by them?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it was, especially since I did actually like the team comp this time from Heart and Soul, because it really kind of it really put Limitless between a rock and a hard place. Okay, so we spoke about the Jinx having 11 deaths. Part of the reason for that is that Adu was playing on this Kayn, and literally on Kayn, his duty was just to go at the Jinx in every single team fight and just kill him every single time. Eventually, the Jinx did get GA, and even then, they were just able to kill her. And in fact, actually, on the way to GA, Omnific picked up the stopwatch, and he accidentally clicked it right in the fountain like the second after he picked it up. So that was just unfortunate. But really, like, throughout this game, I felt like this was Limitless' game to lose. And they only ended up picking up the win because at the end, Adu actually just ended up griefing a kill on the Kayn, and then from there, Heart and Soul is just able to end it. But when they, to speak what I was saying before, they're in a hard place because they want to group up around this Jinx to be able to protect her from the Kayn just coming in every time. But then it opened them up for ZPM to just be able to shockwave them on Orianna every single team fight. And we saw that, totally illustrated in this Baron fight. They're all grouping together. They're in the pit anyways, but just trying to avoid getting picked off by Heart and Soul. And then it just allows Sion to be able to come in as just a ball delivery bot for ZPM to be able to get down that shockwave. And I think that if you're fighting that from Heart and Soul, the call needs to be, we are doing this Baron. Either we're just going to wait in a bush, buy it, and control vision, wait for someone to come in and get a pick, or we're going to only play this Baron to turn off. This is something that we see a lot of professional teams. I know we saw it on a lot in the LCS, kind of in the playoffs and things. You start the Baron not to finish the Baron, but to force a team fight because you are in, you're going to be favored because you're ahead, as Limitless was this entire game. So maybe just a little bit of a lack of discipline in the shot calling that time from Limitless Future.
And we are now joined by Martial Arts for Y, the top laner from Limitless. Now, Marshall, you guys played a tough 3-1 series, especially in Game 4, and you pulled out the set. Why are you so comfortable with that pick?
Oh, I played a lot of set in my previous team experiences. And, sorry, someone's walking by. I'm walking home.
No, it's all right. Now,
I just enjoy playing the champion. And they picked Sion. So it's kind of just free.
Well, one thing Elsa was telling us all about is you playing the Aatrox. How much fun was that to get 18,000 gold and absolutely stomp the competition?
Right after they played Aatrox, too.
I had to show them how to play Aatrox,
So, if you could think about, with the season and the teams you guys have played, who is your biggest rival in the league?
It's hard to think about because I did only come into the split halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have to say, Lost Chapter.
And that goes right to the next question. You guys are facing Lost Chapter this week. Is there something that is there some surprise picks people should be preparing for, or are you guys just excited to have a chance to fight Lost Chapter?
I hope you mean you have a chance to beat Lost Chapter, but yeah, I have a lot of things ready they're not going to be ready for.
Ooh.
My champ pool is as big as my forehead. So
is this going to be another top diff game or series? What are we talking about here?
It's gonna be a team gap, honestly.
Oh.
All right. Well, my next question for you, Marshall, is like you said, your champ pool is the size of your forehead. Who's your favorite champ to play, especially in the top lane? Is it Set or is there someone else?
In the top lane, I love playing Aatrox and Mordekaiser the most. But a champ that has a soft spot in my heart for a long time has been Garen and Darius. Because I played Darius with my brothers before they quit the game. And I've just enjoyed the champion ever since.
Well, just a couple more questions for you, Marshall. And the question I have: let's say you're having a great time in the top lane, and you see the other enemy team's jungler, and they have a jungle Taric. Does that put any fear into you?
I'm gonna give that man a haircut.
Oh, all right. Well, a final question for you, Marshall, before I let you go is, and like I said, thank you so much for joining us. And my question is, what is it like playing alongside Omnific Snow Life and not having to worry about that bot lane?
Snow kind of has a whip to my back, and I kind of like it. He bosses me around, but it works.
Love it.
Like a dog in a leash.
Well, at least you're not on an island, I guess, then, right?
It's a super long way. It's like a Chenault.
Oh, yeah,
Just
gotcha.
across the map. Go do something.
Yeah. Has there been, if you could give us a quick story, what's the funniest thing you've ever heard from your bot lane?
Oh, we can't get ganked here. Proceeds to get ganked and die.
That sounds like
All
my
right,
bot
well-
lane. Oh, wait, that's me.
I'm gonna ult right here. Dies to blue buff.
Yep. Oh, no.
Died a boom up. Oh, man.
That's rough.
All right. Well, Marshall, thank you so much for joining us. And, any predictions for this upcoming week with your guys' semifinal matchup?
I think we take it 3-1.
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right, Marshall,
And the
thank you
other
so much.
And what's the other side of the bracket looking like? I forget the other two teams' names.
Oh, it's,
PGO
it's-
and Collective.
PGO and the Collective.
I think PGO takes it 3-0.
Oh,
Oh, 3-0.
man.
Big brain, forehead.
I think that while Puff is an amazing player, he's gonna get gapped. It's gonna be hell to watch on his stream.
Oh, no.
All right.
She got
Well,
that face cam and everything.
all right. Well, Marshall, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck in your series.
It's a pleasure. I'll try not to end.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Good luck.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Now we get to the predictions of the semifinals: the Collective versus PGO. Now, Elsa, who do you got?
Oh, certainly PGO's on a roll, and, we heard from Marshall that was his pick. For me, it's going to be collective effort, but I think it's going to be a really close series. I would say it's going to be a 3-2 for collective effort. Earlier in the season, PGO was able to get the best of collective in a really close 2-1 series. And I think that part of the reason probably that collective chose PGO was to show that was kind of a fluke, to show that they deserve the top seed that they have and that they're one of the best teams in this league. But if we know anything about predictive gaming, it's that they rise to the occasion and that they're a very scrappy team, that they're not going to go down without a fight. So I do really think that it's going to be a really, really close series. I think probably I would predict that teams are going to trade games back and forth. But for me, I think Collective comes in the clutch. I have them in game 5, and I have them being the winner.
All right. Well, Hiccup, what's your thoughts?
Well, it's 3-2, and it's going to PGO. Because I have PGO going all the way, because I don't think it's changed. I just think that this was a poor decision on Collective's part, because now they have to play against PGO, and that's fine and dandy. But VOD reviews are going to be in there, and they're going to be taking a look at the previous series and measuring up to that. So I still think that they have the comms, they have what's there, and they'll have the bounce back. They showed the bounce back already once. They can do it again if they do lose a game. I do think that this game is going to go running as soon as somebody gets the first win. So as soon as game 1 happens, I think that at that moment, that's the momentum that whoever wins needs in order to get there. So I think a lot of it weighs on the first game. But yeah, I do think it'll go down to Silver Scrapes, and I do think that PGO is going to take it.
All right. Well, I won't say who it was, but there was a player from the Collective that reached out to me to tell me 100% they were going to choose PGO, and this was before the quarterfinals matchups. So I knew that they were going to do it, and I predicted it. I thought they were going to choose PGO, and I think Collective win 3-1. I just think that, it's going to come down to, obviously it's going to be some close matchups, but I think in the end, the Collective pull it out with 3-1. And our last semifinal matchup is between Lost Chapter and Limitless Future. Hiccup, who do you got and why?
So, as much as I like martial arts for why, that was a really good segment with him, but I do have Lost Chapter winning this one 3-1. I think that they're definitely a force to be, Limitless is definitely a force to be reckoned with, especially after this last series. They have what it takes to beat them, but I do think that they might, get into their heads. It's Lost Chapter. Lost Chapter hasn't lost a series yet, minus their, buys or forfeits that they had. But, they're not forfeiting now. They're in the playoffs. They're here to win, and I think it's going to be a 3-1 going over to Lost Chapter.
And Elsa, who do you got taking it all in this series?
So to stay true to my previous predictions, just like Hiccup did with PGO, I think Lost Chapter is the best team in the league. I think that Limitless Future has had a good run, but I think it comes to an end here, and I think Lost Chapter shows them the team that they are. I think it's going to be a 3-1 for Lost Chapter.
See, for me, my thoughts is going to be a Lost Chapter 3-2. I think it's going to come down to the wire, just because we got to see some of the other players on Limitless Future, show up and produce at a high level. So I think it's going to be a close 3-2. And we bring in our last guest, Gregorio, the jungler for Lost Chapter. Now, knowing that you guys are heading into that series against Limitless Future, what's your thoughts, and did you expect to face them?
Come in with something, be able to take a game off of us, but I really don't expect too much.
All right, well, for you, watching the quarterfinals, who impressed you the most out of the 4 teams that played?
Honestly, even though they lost, Team Ambition, Heart and Soul honestly impressed me the most, for sure.
There we go. Now we asked Martial Arts for why whose favorite champ is. Now for you as a jungler, who's your favorite champ?
Well, I mean, based off of my match history, it's kind of looking like Jarvan right now. But honestly, my favorite champ, I have to say Lee Sin. Yeah.
Also, how do you feel about him choosing Lee Sin?
I mean, it makes sense because he absolutely, the last game that you were on Lee Sin, it was like 15 kills or something like that, maybe even more. Although you got rolling off of just KSing your mid lane. So I would imagine you probably got some flame for that. Hey, any way you can do it, I suppose.
Yeah.
And what's the worst jungle pick you've ever seen? Like in terms of someone that you have faced? Not just in this league, but in general.
In general, it was a B1 Ivern. I remember this. B1 Ivern had no sort of like bans for it, and we ended up. I think we lost that game actually. Yeah, it was like something really stupid. Like they were like completely egoing us, and we lost. We ended up losing that game. It was so sad. We had won the series 2-1, but that was.
So, how would you feel if you lined up against another team and they pulled out a Jungle Taric?
Jungle Taric. Oh, I would be terrorized. I've had too much experience against that as well.
All right, Hiccup.
Okay, he talks about Jungle Taric all the time because he wants to play it and he thinks it's viable, and I really just don't think it's that viable right now.
It's scary. It's scary.
He used it one time. We played it in a game where every lane stopped except his, and he goes, "See, it works."
I had 6 kills. I had
our
6
whole
kills,
team
2 deaths.
won. How does it work? Yeah, okay, whatever. Soraka jungle works because the rest of the team worked.
No, Soraka mid works for me, but that's about it. All right, well, just a couple more questions for you, man. And when you think about this team and joining this league, when do you think this group clicked, and when did you see that turn?
So yeah, this is basically one of the 2 first actual seasons that we've played together as a team. I think it all really started to click after the 3rd week. So we had 2-1 the first 2 weeks in CCS, and then I think ever since that we kind of just started clicking. We found like a good scrim rate schedule. We started finding our picks and everything like that and comps. And that's when the 2-0s kind of started rolling, and that's when we really got started rolling as a team. All
right, well, final question for you, man. And What are your predictions this week for both semifinal matchups?
All right. This might be kind of spicy. I'm honestly predicting 3-2 PGO for that series.
Oh. Wow,
Yes!
you guys want a shot at PGO? All right. I'm
not alone.
I'm guessing you're gonna choose yourselves. So what's your guys' series gonna be?
Nah, we're gonna get 3-0. Seriously though, I'd say 3-1. I think they'll take a game off of us, but I don't think we're gonna really falter.
See, if it's game 1, is your teammates just gonna be like, you jinxed us, man?
That would be funny. That would be really funny.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck this weekend or this week.
Thank you.
Don't forget to tune in at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the semifinals with the CCS. And make sure to watch the CC Zone next week when we break down the matches and hear from more players heading into finals week. I'm Brankles with Hiccup and Elsa, and we'll see you guys next time on the CC Zone.